Hey everyone, my name's Chris Walker, and I have a 60% message to meeting rate with LinkedIn DM. I've been building my profile and sharing content on LinkedIn for more than 5 years, which now gives me the opportunity for people to see my message, recognize who I am, and read it very frequently. People understand my perspective and trust me, and therefore are more likely to take a meeting with me. Odds are that I book meetings more than 100 times more efficiently than a SDR. The method that we use is sending LinkedIn. The method that we use is sending LinkedIn direct messages to our exact ICP people based on signals of when they engage with our company or website. So I sort through a manual. I look through a list of the people that have visited our website that get de-anonymized by our B2B, and I look through Sales Navigator lead suggestions based on people that interacted with my content or my company. And then I send those people, then I filter based on the persona and the account that I'm going after, and then I send messages to people that match that criteria. This, in general, the actual workflow is manual and doesn't take almost any time to implement. Install the B2B script and have a LinkedIn Sales Navigator subscription. And from then you'd be able to start to do this. There's only one, I'm the only person involved in this process at my company right now. My current company, Passetto, that I started in January is only 4 full-time employees. And so I run this all by myself with the limited resources that we have. This costs almost no money to implement at all. So this is more about using your time very efficiently to get the results that you want. I think that any founder, CEO, or other executive can implement this strategy first by really understanding the customer and the market and the problem and doing. I really think that any founder, CEO, or C-level executive can implement this strategy by getting really deep with their customer, by producing content and information on social networks to build trust, and then to be able to leverage this strategy to be able to engage with the right people at the right time.
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline.
Hey Chris, thank you so much for showing up today. I've seen so many videos of you that when you showed up, it really looked like a LinkedIn video, which was hilarious. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
That's funny. Awesome to be here. Great to meet you. Looking forward to diving in.
But it's for anyone, for folks who haven't or maybe aren't active on LinkedIn or live under a rock, can you just quickly in a couple of lines just introduce yourself, and then we can get right into the meat of the topic.
Yeah, my name's Chris Walker. I'm an entrepreneur focused on the B2B go-to-market space. I own businesses that do demand gen and account-based marketing, go-to-market analytics and operations, content production for dark social and places like that. And came up in my career through marketing, but really came through it with a business lens. I think when you look at marketing through a business lens to drive business objectives, you do things a lot differently than how they're practiced today. And so at this point, I just consider myself a business person that knows how to use marketing to drive business results.
I love that. Quick story. I started Spear Growth, the agency, just because a CMO told me that I wanted to become a CMO and I wasn't quite there. And someone told me, hey, CMOs aren't marketers. They're business people who happen to specialize in marketing. And I didn't have the patience to do an MBA. So I just I'd rather just start a business. So I completely get what you're saying. I absolutely love that. And that's what I've seen true for everyone. Every CMO or a marketing person that's really good really deeply understands business and just global, how things work and where the money is moving and just, so love that. Awesome. Perfect. So just, it's Tuesday and this week I've probably read two posts on LinkedIn about how, hey, one of the channels, I think one post was about how outbound doesn't work for them. Right? It works, but didn't work for them, couldn't make it work. And these aren't newbies, these are great marketers or in their own sense, right? Like they have made other channels work, they have generated a lot of revenue, they have built successful businesses, but it couldn't really work for them. And here you are talking about how you got amazing results from outbound. So in just any context on that.
Yeah, I think just like when it comes to how you deploy a marketing strategy, that a lot of the problems that companies have in outbound today are strategy related, following the playbook of predictable revenue in the early 2010s, which is just more activities, more emails, more dials, and then with that, you get higher costs, more tools, lower conversion rates, higher customer acquisition cost. And between when that model was produced in 2011, where you brought an SDR in and they were making 45K OTE, SDR costs have inflated, the cost of marketing and getting a lead have inflated, and this model of general mass production and the inflexible nature of this model have created problems where like companies just can't make the math work anymore. And I think that when you think about it from a common sense lens, I think it matches that reality where you're going after a C-level executive, let's say a CFO or a CTO or a CISO, and you got a 23-year-old person that doesn't know anything about cybersecurity, doesn't know anything about finance, like barely knows anything about like business in general. They just got out of college. And to think that that person is going to send compelling emails to get those types of executives to invest their time, which, by the way, is incredibly expensive and incredibly important, to invest their time with that person, I just think is entirely unrealistic. And why, from both sides, and just the economics and from a common sense angle for buyers, I think that the general model of outbound needs to change, and companies are being forced to change it.
I love that. And I know you keep I think you have said just in our conversation just before this started as well, you mentioned companies just lack common sense. So in that context, can you just walk us through the results and what are a few key, I think, just stages of, let's say, hey, like this is how you build the list, or is there a list that you build, and then like what are the stages, and then we can go into that. How do you do a couple of those things, and then maybe how do you do them differently compared to how people get it wrong?
Cool. Yeah. So I believe that outbound is best done incredibly targeted, incredibly precise, not a high volume motion. When you have a resource like this added into the sales process, that the deal sizes need to justify this additional investment. And so the number one thing to recognize in outbound is that the sender of the email or the message or the phone call is actually the most important thing. Nobody optimizes for this in their outbound cadences. They're thinking about how many sentences and what do we say in sequence number 5. They don't realize that Jimmy Jewel, the SDR, or like Jimmy, this person in the SDR, this random person, when their email comes through, nobody cares. Your customer does not care. And I think that and in comparison, when you get an email from Chris Walker or John Miller or Rand Fishkin or somebody that you know, you are way more likely to at least read the preview, way more likely to open it, way more likely to consume it. And so I think that element is number one, is the sender. Then I think it's very underappreciated that one sender that a lot of your customers know can be more effective than 50 BDRs that your customer is not aware of. So I think that one is huge. I think number 2 is the offer. So being so tight in the type of company that you help that you can craft a 2 to 3. You are the sender. You're going to get a lot of opens and reds. Now, what are you saying that's going to compel somebody to move? When I do this, I'm targeting C-level executives. And those people are busy. They get a lot of messages. What am I going to say that's going to make them take a meeting with me or get interested enough to learn about it? And so I think being very precise around this is the type of company we help, this is the person that we help, this is the value proposition, and then lastly, this is the offer. How am I making something so compelling that people would feel not smart to reject the offer? And so I think that's number two. And then number three is knowing the right signals to figure out when to engage with those people. And so you basically I get the attention through the sender. I make sure that when I send a message that it's most likely to be consumed, that I'm delivering an incredible offer, and that I'm doing it at the right time to the right account or person.
I absolutely love that. And you're right. I haven't seen almost anyone talk about optimizing for who's sending the email. So let's actually get into it. Let's get into the specifics of each of the three things, right? Let's just start actually from the signals bit, because it also ties into who you're sending it to. So can you sort of also show how specifically you set it up? Like, is there a list of companies? Are there a bunch of tools? When do you and how do you get the signals? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, given just like the stage of where my company's at, there's not a ton of automation. There's not a ton of tools. If you wanted to like overcomplicate this and scale this out to 10 people, then you could add technology and tools and things like that. So a combination of LinkedIn Sales Navigator and then our B2B. So you get first-party de-anonymized website visitors, and then you get like LinkedIn Sales Navigator engagement. I just look at all those people, sort by job title, sort by company firmographics, figure out the people that have the right job title and the right company firmographics, and then make a decision on, is this an account that I want to engage right now? And then I'll go and make a manual outreach. There's no automation around it. I'm writing a different email or message to every single person. And when I do that, you send less emails, you get a much higher response rate, and the meetings that you have are much higher quality. And so at the moment, I get about a 60% message to meeting sat conversion. That means I send 10 messages, I get 6 meetings. A BDR would be lucky to need 6,000 to 10,000 activities to get 6 meetings. And so you can see from an efficiency and productivity standpoint, it can be like highly impactful. And so I think that is just an entirely different strategy to outbound. And it requires you to think about how reputation and personal brand and company brand have such a big impact on outbound effectiveness.
For those who are listening to this and not watching, I am blown away because 60% message to meeting rate is unheard of. Like, so that's really really interesting. So when still sticking to the list that you're making, our B2B, I understand someone comes on your website, maybe they visited a specific page. Like, how have you set up our B2B? Let's get into that. Is it like people who have visited a specific page, or people are in your ICP? Do you just look at, like, how does that work? Like, is it just like a stream of profiles in Slack? Who looks at it? Who tells you to reach out? Like, what does that look like?
We install the tag on our website. I get an email every day that has the people that have been on our website that they've been able to de-anonymize, and then I manually go through it and find the people that make sense. Like, and so that's the initial. And then when you think about it, like, for a company that's less than 10 million in revenue, that's selling $100,000 to $1 million deals, you just don't need such a high. If your motion is efficient, you just don't need a high volume. And I think that a lot of companies have gotten trapped in the volume game, and the volume game that leads to super inefficiencies. And I just have my entire career just leaned the other way completely, which is like, how do we create the most efficient engine? And then how are we able to methodically scale that up rather than a really inefficient machine?
Love that. And then what about LinkedIn Sales Nav? Like, what kind of signals are you looking in Sales Nav?
Gosh, I don't like. LinkedIn sends me an email, here are suggestions. I look at them. The suggestions are pretty good. Most likely people that have been engaging with my posts or looking at my profile or things like that. But I don't even know what LinkedIn is doing, but it's able to find the people that matter to me.
I absolutely love this one because, yeah, I'm literally speechless because I think every time we've run a campaign or I've heard someone, I'm not an outbound expert for context, but every time I've seen someone do outbound, it's always the takeaways. It's all about the list. It's all about how well the list has been made. But in this
No.
case,
You know what? Like the reason that my outbound messages work so good is because I am so compelled that I can help the person I'm messaging. That's why. There is no way that a BDR feels the level of conviction about helping their CFO target customer the way that I do when I send a message. Otherwise, I'm not going to send the message. And I think that there's a big element in that subconsciously that I don't send messages to a lot of people. I'm really looking at the company, and then when I'm sending the message, I am very compelled that what I'm delivering to this person is going to deliver 10x or more ROI on their investment. And I think that level of certainty has a whole other element to it.
and then when you're filtering profiles, can you just walk us through what a few things that you look at sometimes, right? Like just or most often.
I'll pull up Crunchbase, look at the company's funding situation, pull up their website, look if I see, is it usage-based pricing? Is it pure SaaS? Is it a PLG motion? Do they have dual motion? What's going on there? If they're publicly traded, you can start to look at their stock price trends and some stuff like that, but generally we're more in the private markets. Employee size, revenue size makes sense, but generally at that, there's not a ton that I'm looking for in advance except for those types of things because there's very specific challenges that companies have at different stages. And especially right now, the challenge is pretty homogenous for companies for the 25 million to 250 million, which is that unit economics are not in a place where they can continue to scale. And some companies got to 150 million skipping these stages during the growth at all costs era, and now they're 180 million and have a 5-year CAC payback, and really difficult to figure out what to do at that point. And then you got other companies that are 25, 30 million that realize that they're not going to be able to keep growing 30, 50% if they don't change something fundamental. So yeah.
I think that's the key, right? I think you've gotten so good at understanding who your ICP is that you can look at, and let me know if I'm wrong, that you can look at a company based on these broader level metrics, like just the revenue, employee size, and you can sort of get a sense of, hey, like these are the challenges company must be facing, and you have a very good offer which we'll get into to send to these folks. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, and people think this is like some automated, like highly curated thing. No, I literally like manually look through a spreadsheet. I find their LinkedIn profile manually. I write the email manually. It's kind of like in my LinkedIn content. Like in my LinkedIn content, people think I like will schedule posts and like pre-write them. And no, I literally just go to my computer at 7:30, find something that I want to write about, take 30 minutes and write about it, manually publish it at 8 a.m. and move forward. And like other people are building automation and hiring ghostwriters and doing all this other stuff, and they actually take the magic out of the thing they're doing. And so I believe a lot in not introducing scale and automation to something that doesn't work manually. I think a lot of companies jump to automation and they automate shit they shouldn't be doing anyway.
Love that. Okay, perfect. Then let's get into the offer itself, right? You said that you have a very good offer for a niche ICP. Can you share an example? If I do understand that offers aren't something that everyone can share, but can you share an example of, hey, this is the kind of message I usually send?
Hey, CEO or CFO of XYZ, company. Over the past 18 months, we've been working on something that's been able to combine CRM data and financial data into one view to calculate go-to-market KPIs and unit economics and find the biggest opportunity for breakthroughs and growth in your company in less than 14 days. We've done it with 50 companies already. Are you open to 15 minutes for me to show you more about what we're doing?
One thing that I really love about that is there's no personalization BS in that. And hey, I think there's this joke I always make is that if I can tell you where your kid lives, you would report me, not work with me, right? Like, so I think a lot of people just
It's
do
just
need
not
less
needed.
personalization.
It's not. When you have a strong offer and you know who the offer should go to that delivers value, knowing where someone went to college and the mascot of the college and that type of shit just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that especially in the outbound BDR, that we're focused on solving the wrong problem with band-aids. Using automation to put in where the person went to college is a band-aid. And so I think that, yeah, I don't think about that explicitly, but I don't think we need to get cheeky with personalization when we have a really strong offer to a defined person that's going to get value from it.
Let's talk a little bit more about the offer itself, right? So, by the way, I'm a huge fan of offers. For our clients, we built frameworks to try and figure out what a good offer is because it's very hard to build it for someone else. It's easy to build for yourself, very hard to build for someone else. The example that you've given um, was fairly simple, right? Like, hey, like this is what we do. Would you want a 15-minute call, right? So, how would you, especially, I'm sure that you've also helped other companies craft offers. What is a good offer based on what you see and how to improve one or think of one? Like, if someone's listening, they want to create their own, what's that?
Yeah, so to be clear, there's like tons of published work that people that are way better at delivering a compelling offer than me. So, like, one, just note that. Like, I'm not pretending to be an expert on this, but what I do does work. I think number one is like, what are you doing different? Like, so combining CRM data and financial data together. That's what we're doing different. Companies struggle to be able to do that and look at the data. What's the big outcome? We can find the biggest opportunity for a breakthrough in growth in your company in less than 14 days. And then, why should I believe you? We've done these projects with 50 companies already like you. Here's a link to the page of what our customers say. Do you want, and then what do you ask? And then, like, for an ask, you can say, you want a 15-minute call to learn more about what we're doing? Could I, set up time for us to get your feedback? So depending on like where you are in the stage of the offer, you can ask for feedback. You can ask for more or less a sales call, either one, depending on the situation.
I love that you broke it down into elements. I want to focus on the first one, which I think everyone else ignores the most. Like, let's say you said you have to focus on what you're doing differently. If three other competitors come in the market, and obviously there are companies that can tie data together, uh, then how does that change things? Would you change the product? Would you build something new? Or would you focus more on positioning? Or is it subjective? I know like it's a specific question, but how does that work?
Yeah, so just in this case, like nobody else is doing this, at least at the level that we're at. So we have like a first mover advantage. The reason that I get a first mover advantage in all these things, and then people follow on with me 2 or 3 years later, is because I'm in the work solving the problem with a bunch of companies. So I see the patterns way earlier. If you look at the demand gen thing, I was talking about creating demand in 2019. By 2021, you got 50 demand gen, create demand type of agencies that followed along with the same messaging. The same thing will happen here. It's just I'll get 1 to 2 years of runway before people recognize it. And so during that time, obviously being smart while you have that first mover advantage and you have that type of stuff. And then over time, I think by figuring out what your strategic moats are going to be. So when you think about that, I think that one of the downfalls of most of the tools that try to do something like this today is that they're pure SaaS plays, and that services are required for different various reasons to make your customer actually successful and make good decisions around how to deploy millions of dollars. It's not just about supplying the dashboard or the data. It's helping people validate and make real decisions about lots of money. And so for whatever reason, as the market matures and there's more feature parity, it's just about understanding what your strategic moats are. At some point, you can leverage social proof and customer testimonials and things like that to drive home a message. So I think it evolves over time.
I think that's a good. I think it's a very important point. Your product needs to be good, and it
Who would have
has to
thought?
be it has to be unique. So the offer that you're creating is not. I think that's a place that a lot of people do falter in. That a good offer is a discount or a gift card or hey, I'll do this. Like that's where I think that's a direction everyone else takes. It's usually not the product itself.
Yeah, I mean, here's the problem, and this is another common sense thing. Here's the problem with gift cards, is that a C-level executive that deploys tens of millions of dollars a year in different budget doesn't give a fuck about your $200 gift card or your pair of AirPods. They care about delivering impact for their business, maximizing their time, and having a work-life balance for the rest of the parts of their life. And sitting on a 30-minute demo about a product that they don't want for $200 is not a good proposition to them. And so when we think about crafting, sure, you can do that for the manager level employee that's going to buy a productivity tool for $25 a month and you hope that you scale user growth. Go and do that for the mid-level manager level people and give away those gift cards if you can make the CAC and math work. It just doesn't matter for a 100K ACV multi-stakeholder product that's sold and approved through a C-level executive. And so when we target these people, what needs to be clear is the value that's being offered to them through the outcome of whatever we're trying to what solution that we're solving. That's the ROI, not the $200 gift card for their time to sit in. And I think that we need a lot of distinctions there. I do think that if you are selling a commodity offer at a commodity price in a commodity market to somebody, that leveraging that and trying to do good salesmanship can get you through. But I think that to senior level stakeholders and large deals that are multi-stakeholder, potentially transformational, like the real B2B sale, I think that those just by common sense show you that strategy is not bringing the right people into your sales process.
Love that. And then finally, let's get to the first point that you mentioned, that the sender of the email or the LinkedIn message is important. Let's finally talk about that, right? Like, hey, is there, from a pure execution perspective, time perspective, or how do you make sure that, like let's say if someone is starting out, how can they make sure that they're known amongst the right folks? If the question should be something else. What should the question?
I mean, like, it's not much more complicated than the people you're sending emails to have to know and trust you. I don't know how much.
And so to create content like that, right? I know you've already mentioned you're in the trenches, you know what's happening, so you're talking about things like that. You try and stay above the curve. Try to make sure that hey, like you know what's happening and you become a source. Like that's the kind of content I've seen. Like you become the source of. Hey, if you want to know where the industry is going, follow Chris. That's I think how I see the kind of content you create.
Yeah.
Is there, if anyone had to replicate what you were doing, what would that look like? And if you can think of that.
I'm literally showing the exact same playbook as I start my new company right now. It's the same thing I did in 2019. Get in the trenches with your customer, solve their real challenges, host a live event where you communicate the things that you're learning and seeing, reformulate a message, continue to work on the product, figure out what the customer says about their experience and their outcomes, figure out how you can lean more into that, refine the product. It's like, and that's the playbook. And then when you have a refined product that you deliver repeatable outcomes to customers, that you know exactly who you're targeting, then you get really loud about it. And that process can take 9 to 24 months for somebody to really dial in. And so I'm 8 months into that process right now.
I love that. I'm going to try and summarize it, and then Chris, I want you to tell me if I missed out something. Okay. So I'll tell you what Chris is doing is not. Okay. So what it's not is find a great sender in the company to send the emails from, create a great offer, and then build a signal-based sales or minimal or more complex thing to start doing the reach out. What it really is get in the trenches, build a great product, understand your customers, understand what they need, get a 2 years head start on the industry, make sure you have your moats in place. Then you start posting a lot and spend, I think, significant amount of time posting stuff, become an industry leader in that space. I think that's all the important part. And then, yes, then send a few emails. And then you can get the same 60. Is that the summary?
Yeah, it is. And so I think that it's important to recognize that things that really work, that drive tons of scalability, where you go from 2 million to 10 million to 20 million in a set of a couple of years, are driven through how you set up to get to the first 2 million. Are you setting up on the right foundation? Do you have a lot of momentum? Do you have a captive audience? Did you build and tweak the product? Have you really been thoughtful around the messaging so that when you hit go and you're starting to move and you have scalability, that it actually can go with you? And I think that a lot of people in the past have historically tried to artificially inject a lot of capital into the process rather than a solid foundation and try to spend their way through it. I think that type of, 95% of startups fail, or I think more than that at this point. So, like, is that strategy working for most people? No. And so I think that just thinking methodically about business growth and how to get from one stage to the next stage to the next stage, I think is really important. And I think I can speak from experience that skipping stages just create larger messes later.
I love that. And just to make sure we follow the theme of the podcast, how many people are involved in the outreach process? Is there anyone apart from you involved in this? And
It's
this
just
also
me.
includes things like setting up ops or setting up anything at all. Is there anyone else involved?
It's just me.
Love that. And how long do you spend in a day, in a week, uh, doing the outreaches?
2 hours a week.
2 hours a week. Love that, Chris. Thank you so much for this. Is there anything else that I should have asked you, but I didn't?
I think we covered a lot here. That's the sentiment of like what I'm doing here is that you could argue that the outbound is like just the second, the side dish to the LinkedIn and the podcast and the events. You could look at it that way. It's interesting to think how those two things actually like go hand in hand and feed each other. I've been obsessed recently as founder of a less than $10 million company to be involved in the marketing, to be involved in the outbound and the prospecting and the sales, and to be involved in the onboarding and delivery and the renewal of a customer and experience the entire like life cycle of your customer at that stage where you can do it, and be very particular around what part of the process you're working on right now. If you do not have a great product that's repeatable, that delivers the right margin and things like that, there's no sense in flooding a bunch more people through it. And so I think being able to understand all of the levers and say, okay, at this point now, we need to just work on really, really nailing in the product. Let's just keep the marketing engine humming. Let's make sure that we get enough customers to sustain or continue our growth. But really the priority is fixing the product. And then once that happens, then we're going to switch over. We're going to focus a lot more on acquisition. I think that you need to be in the details as the founder CEO to know how to pull those strings and manage all that together. And that's before you have a factory. Once you greater than 10 million, 20 million, your go-to-market runs a lot more like a factory, in which case the CEO founder is now the overseer of the resources and the controls and things like that of the factory, leveraging their leadership team. So it's becomes a little bit different than when you're 2 million ARR or 5 million ARR.
Love that. Very quickly, if people had to find you, where could they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the best place to catch me, Chris Walker 171. You can search Chris Walker as well. I host the B2B Revenue Vitals podcast, available on Apple, Spotify, and other places, so feel free to check that out too.
Love that. And if you can give a quick elevator pitch to anyone listening that may want to work with you, can you just do that right away?
At Passetto, we've become obsessed with this problem about connecting finance and go-to-market where there's a big disconnect. And so what we've been able to do is connect financial data with CRM data using a unified data architecture that can then calculate not only the effectiveness and the performance of go-to-market against KPIs, but the unit economics as well, which is a big missing piece in how companies calculate that. And then with that data, you're able to quickly identify what is the biggest issue in our go-to-market, whether it be the cost effectiveness of creating pipeline at the top of the funnel or GRR or any other metric. You're able to isolate and identify that and then put together a plan, a dedicated plan of how we augment that metric to create a breakthrough in growth. And so that's what we help companies do at Passetto.
Love that, Chris. Thank you so much for doing this. I absolutely enjoyed creating a summary of this. I especially enjoyed creating the summary of this because it started off that, hey, there are 3 stages, but then we then uncovered what really are the steps. That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was a good topic.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.